Thanks everyone for coming. Can you all hear me in the back?
Yes.
Sweet. It's pretty informal, so if you have questions along the way, feel free to just raise your hand. So what I want to talk about is this book I wrote, The Young Atheist Survival Guide. Let me give you a really quick story to begin with. So Eduardo mentioned that I wrote this book called I Sold My Soul on eBay years ago. And long story short, I've been an atheist for about 10 years, and I wasn't brought up in a Christian household. So a long time ago, I was like, you know, you can be an atheist and you get surrounded by atheists. I never really knew what happened inside of a church. So I put on eBay this thing that said, I will go to whatever church you want me to go to, or synagogue, or mosque, or wherever. You can bid on me going to wherever you want me to go. And this pastor ended up winning, and he sent me to a whole bunch of churches. And that's kind of the basis of that book. But at one point after that came out, I got an email from this guy. And he said, hey, I'm like the president of the honors college at a really like almost fundamentalist Christian college. And every year we like to do a talk from someone whose views totally go against the views of our student body. And he's like, so a couple years ago we brought in a feminist. And then like, another year, he's like, last year we brought in a Democrat. And so why don't we have an atheist come down? And then he said, P.S. Don't tell anyone, I'm an atheist too. He's like, no one knows, they would expel me if they found out. I go here because my dad works here, so I get free tuition. So I figured, why not just get a free education, graduate, then do whatever the heck I want. Which is exactly what he's doing. But I went down there and I met like the 2 or 3 people who actually know he's an atheist. Like 2 close friends who aren't going to rat him out, and 1 professor. So after this talk, like, we went out and I got to talk to all of them too. And, you know, I said I was a teacher. I teach in Naperville. And this one girl said, I'm a teacher too. I teach Sunday school at a local church. And we were talking about how it works at her church and stuff. She said what they do is they tell her, she works with 8-year-olds. They said, you have to teach the 8-year-olds this. And they don't, you know, they make her teach them certain things, but then she has a little bit of leeway as to how she does it. So one time they said, here are some gingerbread men, just like outlines of gingerbread men. And they said, have the 8-year-olds draw what a good Christian looks like. And she's like, that's a little weird because Christians don't all look the same. So what are they going to draw? Like, there's no one stereotypical Christian. And they're like, uh-huh. And they gave her some more gingerbread men. And they're like, and then have the kids draw what a non-Christian looks like. Yeah, and she's like, this is a bad idea. So she tries telling these 8-year-olds, like, look, you can't tell by looking at someone whether they're Christian or not a Christian. You have to talk to them. You have to get to know them. But she saved one of the kids' pictures for me, thinking I'd get a kick out of it. So according to this one kid, let's see if this works.
It is hard.
No? Whatever. Here's what one of the kids drew. So this is what a good Christian looks like.
A banana?
Yeah, it has a banana. It's like it knows atheists are afraid of it, right? Yeah, it's saying, I love God, has a cross in his hand, freckles, you know, nicely combed hair. Red hair. Nice shirt, nice tucked in shirt to his pants. That's what a good Christian looks like. You know, if you have Christ, you look like that. But then she's like, and here's what the non-Christian look like. Yeah, this guy was so mad he ripped his sleeves off in anger. He got tattoos that are poking out of his skin. That's drugs.
He's got a bottle.
Alcohol. Yeah, he's got the bottle. I don't know if you could read this. It says, cussing, God isn't real. Piercings everywhere, didn't even bother to do his hair. I don't know why the clothes aren't even colored in all the way. It's just anger all over the side. Smoking something, piercings. I'm offended by this. What is this? What's up with that? That's just me.
Yeah.
So
he looks angry.
Make it look
he looks
more
very
evil.
angry.
Yeah.
And here's the problem. I don't think anyone's sitting this 8-year-old down and saying, look, this is what an atheist looks like. But this 8-year-old's picking it up from somewhere. Whether it's his pastor or his parents or his friends, like, this is the stereotype he's forming in his head when he's 8 years old. Now, and imagine for a second when this kid goes to, let's say this kid goes to a public high school where you run into people who aren't Christians. How is this kid going to react to those students? What happens when he goes to maybe a public college and he meets a whole lot of people who aren't Christian? Like, if any of you have been like an out atheist at school, people, how many of you have had this conversation where, you know, you get to know someone and everything's fine, and then they ask you, oh, what religion are you? And you say, I'm an atheist. And their response is, oh, but I thought you were a good person. Something like that. Have you had that?
Well, the usual, when I started telling people I was an atheist when I was 14,
yeah.
The usual response was, you're going to go to hell.
Right. And it's scary. And like, when you're an atheist in that position, you get on the defensive and you feel like everyone's out to get you. And this kid's kind of showing why that is. Like, it's tough to be an atheist. This was in Arkansas, where this kid's from. But imagine coming from the Bible Belt and being an atheist. I mean, and for anyone who's been to college, even in Chicago, where it's a little more public, a little more diversity here, it's still not easy. So this is what like we're up against, and this is what we have to deal with. So let me tell you another story. This happened about 10 years ago. There was a girl who moved to a high school. Her name is Nicole. Her family moved to a little rural part of Oklahoma, right in the Panhandle, and she went to high school there. She entered as a freshman. So imagine just right there, she's leaving all of her friends, she's going to high school, she's the only person she knows in a high school of a few hundred kids. And, you know, at first it was fine. She figured, I want to make friends, so what can I do? Let me try out for the football team. It's a pretty ballsy move. She tries out, she makes the football team. And she's really good, and she even said the guys on the team treated her like one of their own. Very nice. So in the winter, she tries out for girls basketball, and she makes that team. And at the very end of the first game, you know, I don't know if they won or lost, but at the end of the first game, her team, by the way, I've played sports like at a young age. Like at the end of a game, you shake hands with the other team, you say good game, and then you walk off and cry if you're on my team. Like, her team went to center court, stood in a semicircle. The other team came to center court. They stood in a semicircle. They all held hands. Then all the players, all the coaches, everyone in the stands started saying the Pledge of Allegiance and the Lord's Prayer.
Yeah.
That's what they did at the end of the game. And so she went up to her coach right then and she said, Coach, I don't want to be a part of this. Not because she was an atheist, which she was, but because she thought it would be disrespectful to the other kids if someone who wasn't a Christian stood in their circle. Like, that's how nice this girl is. So she said, what should I do? Because I don't believe in this. And the coach is like, go to the locker room. So she did. She went to the locker room. And that was on a Friday night, I think. That weekend, the coach met with the principal of the school and the superintendent of the district to talk about the situation. Because apparently it was a situation. And what they decided to do is, let's kick Nicole off the team, because what is she doing? And they didn't even have the decency to tell her they did that. On Tuesday, she went up to see the roster for that night's game, and her name wasn't on the list. And she's like, Coach, why am I not playing in the game? And he said, 1, you stole somebody's shoes, and 2, you lowered team morale. And so she's like, well, I didn't steal someone's shoes. I did borrow another student's shoes, but I gave it back to her, and that girl said thank you. And everyone saw me do it, so I don't know what's up with that. And lower team morale, like she would go to practice early to run laps. Like, how is she bad for team morale? It didn't make any sense. But she was kicked off the team. And imagine when you're in a rural high school and a freshman just got kicked off the basketball team. Everyone found out. And everyone knows why she got kicked off the team, because she's an atheist. So, I mean, thankfully this is before the days of like Twitter and Facebook and stuff, kind of. And Facebook, no, but like Twitter pretty much. She got harassed like crazy at school. Kids would say nasty things to her in the classroom. They would say the Pledge of Allegiance, and like every time they were like, and we're one nation under God, like all in her face. They would, one teacher, even, Nicole said, can I go take a bathroom break? And she went. And the teacher left, and the teacher was like, I hate that girl. The principal's own son saw her in the hallway and said, the very thought of you makes me want to grab a gun. Like, these are nasty, vicious things. And not only that, this is 2004. John Kerry was running against George W. Bush. She couldn't vote. But she said in class at some point, if she could vote, she would vote for John Kerry.
Oh my God.
And so the kids started calling her gay. She was also, her parents were mixed race, so they started calling her, like, whatever you call a mixed race child. Just nasty, nasty things. And she went through this all the rest of the year. So the following year, as a sophomore, she actually tried out for the basketball team again. And she made it again. And at the end of the first game, here's what happened. She actually got this on video. It doesn't matter that you can't hear the sound. That's Nicole right there standing outside the prayer circle while they're all praying. And they're saying the Lord's Prayer. And after they finish, just watch what happens as Nicole's standing there just wondering, like, what do I do here? They're done, they break. Her friend puts her arm around her, maybe to comfort her or something. Nicole said, yeah, their friend came up to me, put her arms around me and said, don't worry, God forgives you and I forgive you.
What? That's good.
Yeah, and then the next day she was kicked off the team again. Like, this is what she had to go through. And by this time, her parents had said, this is more than enough. No one should have to go through this. They pulled Nicole and her younger siblings from the school. They started homeschooling them. And the following year, Nicole even said, I miss people at school. I want to go back. So she went back for a couple days. And she said there was a new kid at the school her junior year. And, she said, hi, I'm Nicole. And he's like, oh, I've heard about you. You're that dirty little atheist girl. And at that point, she broke down. She's like, I'm not doing this. I'm not going back. So she finished her high school career homeschooling. And that's not a knock on homeschool. That's what she had to go through at her public high school. There's an author named Catherine Stewart who wrote a book called The Good News Club. She actually talked about Nicole, and she said, look, for every Nicole, how many thousands of students would just quietly join the circle and mumble the words? They know the locker room is no place for dissent, and a refusal to participate could be construed as a sign of lack of commitment to the team. They've learned they have to pray to play.
Right.
No school should be putting a kid in that situation. And in fact, her family ended up suing the school district over all the stuff that transpired. The reason we even know all the details of what happened is because it was all laid out in the court documents. And eventually, they settled. So we don't actually know what the final result was, but the district and her family settled the case. They don't talk about it really anymore. But that happened. Like, a kid had to go through that. And that was a decade ago. So here's the optimistic side to this. Things have gotten a lot better since 2004 in terms of how high school atheists are treated across the country, which is kind of the basis of what I want to talk about. This is a survey they've done. This is from the Pew Forum for Religion, and I forgot the exact title, but Pew Forum for Religion. They asked people, this is the greatest generation down here, people born before 1928, and they say, how many of you have no religious affiliation? Maybe you're Christian or Muslim or Hindu, whatever. And then there's always that part that says, I am not affiliated with any religion. Some sociologists call it the nones. It doesn't mean they're all atheists, but it means they don't belong to any specific religious group. And so you can tell, look at the greatest generation, like oldest people, only about 5% of them are not religious. And then you look to the silent generation, born through 45, that's 8%. And then you look to the baby boomers, born up to 1964, 13% of them claim to be no religion. Then we get to Generation X. So this is born up from 65 to 1980, 20%. And now let's look at millennials. This is everyone born 81 or later, 26.
Whoa!
Yeah. A quarter of kids now are not part of any religion. This is nationwide. That's a huge shift. And what's amazing is, you might think they become more religious maybe as they get older, but it doesn't look like the numbers are really changing down the line. Like, it looks like this is either going to stay the course or get higher as we go along, if anything. Here's another way of looking at the same thing. This is a research done that was last summer from a different survey. They asked people, do you ever doubt the existence of God? Has nothing to do with really, are you an atheist so much, but just, do you doubt? A lot of Christians might doubt the existence of God. So this is the answers who said, I never ever doubt the existence of God. Hardcore religious people. You would think this number is pretty high if we're a religious country, right? So again, the oldest generation, we're talking like the low 90s. They never doubt God's existence. They know God exists. We get to the silent generation. Kind of the same thing. Like high 80s, low 90s. The boomers, kind of the same thing. Generation X, kind of the same. I mean, it's getting a little lower, but not really. But then again, you get to the millennials, born 81 or after. Check out what's happening here. It's like a hockey stick. That number is falling. And it's not saying they're atheists. It's saying they're starting to doubt the existence of God. They're starting to question religion. That's an awesome thing for us. I mean, personally, it's less of a concern to me whether someone's religious. It's more of a concern whether we can, get along on certain issues, whether we share the same values, things like that. This is awesome to see. That number is like 66% of people, only 66, never doubt their faith. So we saw a quarter of people were not religious. A few more of them are at least questioning, which is awesome. So why are they doing this? What are reasons people might leave their faith? Or, I'm not saying they're going to become atheists, but why do people leave their religious fold? Yell them out. Why do people do it?
Abuse.
Abuse, maybe.
Well, I did because, first off, I realized, I was raised Christian, but I realized there's a lot of religions besides Christianity.
Sure.
And I didn't see that any of the other religions, including the extinct ones, like the Greco-Roman ethos, have any greater claim to being real than Christianity.
And this is just kind of being part of a pluralistic society. You see people believing in different religions.
Yeah, but the other part of it is that, I developed a more scientific mindset.
Yeah.
So those are the two things.
So science is another reason. People are using science as a reason to leave their faith.
Oh, and I guess the third thing is I met atheists and I discovered they didn't all have horns. And
so the
tails.
stereotypes kind of,
I think there is also a link between religious beliefs and political conservatism.
Sure. So they see a link between conservative politics and being really religious, and the Republicans are facing the same issue right now, where a lot of young people don't want to call themselves conservatives or Republican. Yeah. All of these. Are there any more other reasons? Yeah.
Social issues that they don't like.
Yeah, like LGBT issues. Most young people are totally fine with gay people, Christians included. They don't see it as an issue. What is that?
Just plain doubt.
Plain doubt. Yeah, they just start questioning stuff. So the Barna organization, which is like the Gallup of the Christian world, they asked people who left evangelical Christianity. Maybe they're not atheists, but they don't go to church anymore. Why do you not go to church anymore? Why are you not saying you're an evangelical Christian? And they put this together. This is specifically for pastors to understand, this is why people are no longer part of your church. And here's what they said. Too insular. If you're a Christian, you are in a bubble. And you only know other Christians. And you only talk to other Christians. And you don't think about, the rest of the world. That's what kids said. Mm-hmm. Too irrelevant. We're not talking about issues that matter. And I've heard a lot of people in church say this too. Why is the evangelical church not doing enough about poverty? Why don't they ever seem to care about climate change? About LGBT issues? We talk about Jesus, but we don't talk about things that we're actually dealing with, the economy. And there are Christian takes on all of these things, but they weren't seeing it at their church. Too anti-science. We know that. When you say, don't believe what the science books and experts tell you, just listen to what Jesus says. Yeah. That doesn't make sense to a lot of them. Too sex negative. Abstinence-only sex education. I mean, enough studies have shown that it's bad to just teach kids abstinence and not teach them how to be protected. And the Christians that went to these churches knew that this is a bad idea, and they didn't want to be involved in a church that looked down upon anything. I mean, if you talk about really fundamentalist Christians, they don't kiss until they are on the altar getting married. That's super fundamentalist Christian. But stuff along the route between that and having sex, the church forbids basically all of it. And if you have any sort of temptation, they want you to suppress it. And the kids didn't want to be a part of that. Too exclusive. You're part of us, you are the chosen ones in a sense, and no one else matters. Everyone else is going to hell. They didn't like that. And this is what we said, too anti-doubt. In a lot of churches, they teach you to just have faith, put your faith in God. If you have questions about religion, if you are thinking God may not exist, how many of you seen the Book of Mormon? They have a song in there like, if you ever have doubts, turn it off. Suppress. Don't question. Turn off that switch. Don't think about it. To anti-doubt. This is the reason Christians were giving for why they don't go to church anymore. And these are all things that, the secular side seems to do fairly well, or at least we try to. So that's all interesting. Here's another big change. This is the Secular Student Alliance. I worked with this group for a lot of years. I still kind of do. But if you look, when I got involved with them, this is a little after 2001, we had fewer than 50 affiliates across the country. These are college atheist groups who are actually affiliated with the Secular Student Alliance, so we could keep tabs on what they were doing, who their leaders were. We knew that they had events going on. It wasn't just a phantom group on paper. We had like fewer than 50. And then that was pretty steady, and all of a sudden, around 2006, 2007, look at what happens. We went from having fewer than 50 groups to fall of last year when we did our audit. It's at 360. That number is actually 460 now. Wow. That's what's happened with college groups. And granted, there may have been more than just 50 10 years ago, but we didn't know they existed. But this is how many we can keep track of, and we know what they do each semester. We know how many members there are in their groups, what events they have, because the SSA keeps very good records on this stuff. That's what's happened. Now, why did that happen? You could come up with a lot of reasons as to why that's happening, but part of the reason, I think, is you just realize, I'm an atheist, I go to this college, I would like to talk to other people about my doubts. I would like to find some way to voice any frustration I have about religion. So people are starting groups. They find out these other groups exist, and they're like, I want to have one of those on my campus. Let me see if I could start one up. And this kind of chain reaction just kind of spreads, which is awesome. So my guess is this coming school year, they're going to hit 500 groups, which is quite a milestone. That's huge. There are very few schools now, at least big schools, that don't have some sort of group for atheists. I mean, when I was in school at UIC, we had a group at my campus that I started with a friend. I think there was a group at Northwestern that was kind of there, and that was it. There was nothing else in the city. And now I think every single one of the city colleges, UIC, University of Chicago, Loyola, DePaul, Northwestern, they all have groups that are actually, they're big. They're doing a lot of stuff. So that's a big change. Now here's the really cool thing. This is what I'm excited about. This is just high school groups. In 2007, when we first started keeping track of this, we're talking 2 high school groups, only 2 groups for atheists in high school. And then 2009, even in 2011, there were only like a dozen. And what's up with that? Because here's what's really nice. The reason, this is totally legal, by the way, if you're doubting that. You can have an atheist group at a high school because Christians fought for that. Like a couple decades ago, they wanted to have Bible study at college, and some colleges, like public schools, said, no, you can't have a Bible study at college, that's mixing separation of church and state. And the Christian group sued, they took it to the Supreme Court, and the court said, I believe the decision was 8-1, it's totally fine to have a college Christian group. I mean, as long as that offer is made available to all religions, it's not discrimination, it's not violating any laws, that's fine. The Supreme Court actually said at the time, but you can't do that in high school, they're too young. So it was just in college. So then another girl, a high school Christian student, sued her high school a couple years later and said, I want to have a high school Christian Bible study. And Jerry Falwell, I'll get back to him in a sec, she sued, went to the Supreme Court, again, 8-1. They said, yeah, you can have a high school Christian club. What's wrong with that? The Equal Access Act was passed in 1984. Reagan signed it, and it said, look, if you have a high school that does any sort of extracurricular events, a speech team, a drama club, a knitting club, whatever, you can have a Christian club. You know what groups use that bit of information to their benefit? The Gay Straight Alliance. They have those groups all across the country. Why? Because if a school offers any extracurricular club, you can have a Gay Straight Alliance. They legally cannot stop you from forming one. And so this started to happen where more and more atheist groups started for the same reason. And Jerry Falwell said at the time, I'm paraphrasing, this is the best thing that could possibly happen. Because Christians could now proselytize all through high school. They could have groups anyway for Christians. But here's what happened. I don't have the number for fall of 2011, but I do have the number from spring of 2012. That's 46 groups. I don't have the graphic here. Now, it's about 66 groups. And again, I think if you give it a couple years, you're going to see the number of high school atheist groups overtake the college ones.
Praise Jesus.
Yes, right? Yeah. But again, here's what's happening. You have high school students who are very much more politically savvy than I ever was at their age. They see what's going on with their gay friends. They know what they're up against. And they're like, we want a place to discuss our beliefs. Because that's the age when you start questioning for a lot of kids. You start questioning your religion. You start being friends with people who are different religions. And it's like, oh, you mean there are people who don't believe in Jesus? What do they believe? Why do they believe that stuff? And you start having these conversations with your friends in class, maybe outside of class. And this is a chance for them for the atheists in the schools, to start their groups. That's a huge development. This is the biggest untold story right now about what's changing for atheists nationwide. It's what's going on at the high school level. And I know I wrote that book, but I swear that's not why. This is happening, and it's a huge change for what's going on. And now you also have students who realize that, oh, they're saying prayers over the loudspeakers. They shouldn't be doing that. I should contact FFRF. I should contact the ACLU or Americans United. One student in Oklahoma this past spring saw that there were 10 commandments posted on every classroom in his school, and he's like, I don't think that's allowed. And he knew that because he goes on Reddit atheism every day, and he's like, oh, I see all these other people suing about it. I don't think that's legal. He took a picture, he sent it to FFRF, and FFRF is like, yeah, you're right, they totally cannot do that. And the school district had to take them down from everything. And realize these are some brave kids willing to speak out about this. But it's happening more because they all know this stuff isn't supposed to be allowed. In 1963, when they finally took mandatory Bible readings out of the classroom, a lot of kids didn't realize that shouldn't be happening. And the reason it's such a big case, it's about to celebrate its 50th anniversary, is because one kid said, you know what, I'm Jewish. Why am I reading the Bible in school every day? I'm going to bring in a Quran. And he started reading the Quran during Bible study time. He got punished for it. He sent a letter to the ACLU saying, hey, look what happened. By the way, here's $10 if you'll read my letter. He bribed them, totally. And the ACLU said, yeah, you're right, they shouldn't be doing that. And that's why we don't have mandatory Bible readings in public school anymore. But those kids were few and far between back then. It's all over the place now, which is very exciting. So, let me tell you some of the things that high school kids have been doing across the country, which is really neat. Because I don't think I ever heard these stories when I was in high school. I don't even remember hearing a lot of them when I was in college. These are students. They're in the New York Times. This is from, I think, last spring, a couple springs ago. This is Rutherford High School in Florida. They're in the New York Times. Why are they in the New York Times? Because they exist. That's the story. There's this high school in Florida. They have an atheist group. That's the entire story. And what's amazing is, they have a big group. They have like a couple dozen people who show up at their meetings every week that they have their meetings. The teacher who is the sponsor of the group, he's not trying to proselytize atheism to them. He just wants to help them lead discussions. And it's amazing. They said some of the bits that were in the story. There was a girl who went to the atheist club every week. And she also went to the Christian Bible study. And she would do that every week for the whole first semester. And then it says by December, she stopped going to the Bible club. Like, she kind of made her decision. But here's the end of the story in this piece. There were two quotations that really stood out. One of them, there are students who do not want their parents to know they belong to an atheist club. I tell my mother I'm an ocean club. Now, one, if you're a parent who buys that, what the heck? What is that club? But, that happens. I don't even want my parents to know where I am after school because they would get really mad. That's a serious thing that happens all across the country. Here's another quotation. One member whose father is in the Navy, she said he would be angry and disappointed. I don't want to fight with him. She asked that her name not be used for fear it would hurt her father. I don't want us to grow apart over this.
Most southern states.
These are real issues that these kids have to deal with. They're hiding who they are because they got to deal with a lot of crap at home if their parents found out. And so these clubs form like one of the few outlets these kids have where they can openly talk about religion, and not all of them are atheists, but they can, if they're religious, they can voice their doubts, they can have conversations about it. They can't do that at church. They can't do that with their parents, but this is the outlet that they have to do it. And it's a safe haven for them, and everyone lets them make sure they feel very welcome and comfortable. It's awesome. I asked the teacher sponsor, how did you end up starting this group? And he actually said, you know, I've been an atheist for a while, but I never wanted to tell anybody at school because I thought I would be overstepping my bounds. And he teaches a philosophy class where religion is a constant topic of discussion. And one time kids even asked him, what do you believe in? And he said, you know, I don't really want to answer that. I don't want to sway you in any way. So who cares what I believe? What do you believe? You know, let's talk about that. And he would do that every year. And then he realized the kids would ask their other teachers the same question. You know, what do you believe? And they'd be like, oh, well, I believe in Jesus, and I go to this church, and you should come to this church too.
Right.
They would all do that. And so this teacher is sitting there, and he's like, how come they're so open and honest about what it is they do? And here I am hiding all of this side of me.
Yeah.
So finally, a couple years ago, he's like, I'm not going to do that anymore. If they ask me what I believe, I will answer them honestly. And they did ask. They're like, what do you believe? And he said, well, you know, I don't go to church, and my wife doesn't go to church. We're both atheists. And they're like, huh. No one cared. But a couple students came up to him later and they said, we want to start a group for atheists. Can you be our faculty sponsor, which you need for these groups? And he said, sure. And like I said, this group is just growing and growing. And after this article aired, people started sending them books that kids could check out, like a little library for the students, you know? Really fascinating. Another story. This is a kid in Texas, Brian Lisco. He was a senior. He wanted to start an atheist group at school. And at one point, the principal said he could have the club, but he has to call it a philosophy club, and he can't affiliate with the Secular Student Alliance. Which, by the way, they would never tell, like, Christian kids, like, oh, you can't join the Fellowship of Christian Athletes, and just call it the Tim Tebow fan club. Like, they would never do that to them. But they did it to Brian. So Brian contacted the Secular Student Alliance, and the Secular Student Alliance is thinking, you know, we could try to get a lawsuit going or whatever, but why don't we just tell the media? So the SSA contacted the religion writer at USA Today, and she contacted the school, like, how come you won't let these kids have their atheist group? No response. So the next day she sent them another email, same thing, no response. 4 days in a row, no response. And she's like, you know, I'm going to write my article. You don't want me to say the school has no response. And finally, on the last 5th day, they wrote back, and this is the article. After a request for comment, the school abruptly granted Lisco the club on Tuesday. They actually wrote back and said, one line, email, he can have his club. But this is awesome because the media, think about this, if you're a journalist, you love to write about controversial things. People are going to read controversial stories. There is nothing more controversial than a high school atheist up against the world. And every single one of these stories is like a few kids up against the world. And they love writing about it. Like, forget FFRF for a second. Go talk to the media. Your problems will be solved in a heartbeat. Yeah.
And every time any media outlet makes
Contact.
turns this into a big story, quote unquote big story.
Yeah.
The first thing out of the religious apologists is, well, why are these atheists trying to push their views on everyone? I was like,
Right.
Exactly. And it's funny because these kids, and the SSA actually tells them, you know, part of this, if you want to be an SSA affiliate, proselytizing atheism or trying to convert other kids to atheism, that's actually not one of the things the SSA stands for. It's supposed to be a place for discussion, and yeah, we can assume people are not religious or whatever, but that's not the point to create new atheists, you know? So it's funny that they say that. I was telling this story earlier tonight. In Glen Ellen right now, they're doing a battle because a Christian family doesn't want any student in the middle school to read Perks of Being a Wallflower. And the school board actually, in essence, they banned the book last week. And the outcry, because the media got involved, the outcry has been so huge that they're having a school board meeting Monday night, and obviously the church people in the town are going to be there in full force, but so are a lot of other students. who want to fight to be able to read this book on their own. So are a lot of media people because they want to see how this plays out. It's fascinating. And again, no lawsuits involved. You don't need to. It's just a matter of getting the story out there, and people are like, who's forcing whose views on, the kids? The Christians who say no one can read this book that we find objectionable, or the students who are like, who are you to tell me what I can't read? It's great.
What's the big deal about this book?
The book is written from the perspective of like a high school student, but it does talk about sex and pornography and masturbation and some serious, heavy issues. But again, this isn't even a curricular book. The teachers just said, yeah, kids, read whatever you want, and you got to do some work with the book you read. Some kids chose to read the book. One student on their own.
Okay.
And one kid's parents were like, wait, what's in this book? How could the school allow you to read this book? Must not let anybody read it.
Huh.
Like, book banning is the easiest way to get high school kids, like, pissed off and like they've started putting Post-it notes. I think school's done now, but they started putting Post-it notes with the word flower all over the school.
Oh.
It's awesome. So that stuff happens. One more quick story. This girl's name is Crystal Myers, and a year ago, she was a great student in Tennessee. She's a senior. She was like, I think, captain of the swim team. She was editor of the high school newspaper. She wrote a story about, called No Rights, The Life of an Atheist, that she wanted to publish in the school paper. I have worked at a school newspaper. It's pulling teeth to get kids to write anything, much less anything with quality. This is a quality piece that she wrote. And she actually detailed some totally illegal things the school's doing to push religion in the school. And she wasn't trying to start a lawsuit. She was just saying, this is what I have to go through as an atheist. Like, that sucks. That was the gist of the piece. And then the school board, or the superintendent, basically said, yeah, you can't publish this. It's too controversial. What's controversial? She's pointing out like what she goes through on a regular basis. So again, what do? You go to the media and you say, look what they're doing. And so the Knoxville News Sentinel said, well, first they wrote about it, then they gave her space to publish her piece in their newspaper, which got a much wider coverage than it ever would have gotten at just her school. Great piece. So that stuff is happening everywhere. You can't even see this, but the media is helping us out as well, because you now start to see atheist characters in really popular shows. And they're not like the curmudgeons. They're not all like Dr. House. They're not all mean, even if they don't believe in God. These are likable, like really nice characters who make an issue of saying, I don't believe in God, and that's not a bad thing. I don't know if you'll be able to hear this.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, you can't hear this. That's fine. This is Kurt from Glee, like the most popular show and one of the most popular characters. And here he is saying, a student says to him, I will pray for you. Going through whatever, I think he's gay. So they're praying for him to deal with stuff he's going through. He's like, I don't want your prayers. I want your support. I appreciate your support. But I don't need your prayers because I don't believe in God. And it wasn't snarky and it wasn't mean-spirited. It was just an honest, this guy doesn't believe in it. So why are you implying that he does? And how many of you saw on CNN a couple weeks ago, Wolf Blitzer talked to that lady in Oklahoma, saying like, oh, do you pray to God? Do you thank God that you're alive and your family's okay? No, I'm an atheist. And she said it with a smile on her face, and that's what made news. Like, who is Wolf Blitzer to presume that everyone in Oklahoma must believe in God?
And I guess the people who died in that...
all the people who died in this
by
tornado,
God.
they clearly were not Christian. And, who created the tornado in the first place is another question. So, last thing here. This is Jessica Alquist. I know many of you know her name. What was striking to me about Jessica's story is how much it paralleled what Nicole had to go through in Oklahoma with their basketball team. For those who don't know, Jessica was a freshman at school, and she walked into her public high school auditorium in Rhode Island. They had a huge mural on the wall painted, and it said, it was a prayer. It's like, we give thanks to God to make us a good school and good students, blah, 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 amen. And she's like, well, that's weird. And her friend said, yeah, I don't think that should be there. Like, it's a religious prayer. I don't think schools are allowed to do that. So she started a Facebook group saying, we should take down the prayer. And it got a lot of people interested. And the ACLU was like, yeah, that's totally not okay. And Jessica's group started growing and growing. The ACLU filed a lawsuit. And again, imagine, they have to cover up this mural in her school. And everyone knows Jessica did it. And now we're in the age of Facebook and Twitter, and people start leaving messages for her. And it's the same story that Nicole had to go through. Same thing with the Pledge of Allegiance, too. She'd be in class, and kids would be like, one nation under God, like to her, and just saying nasty things to her everywhere. But here's the beautiful part, and this is what's happening now. People are aware of these stories a lot more quickly. No one really knew about Nicole's story other than maybe American Atheists because they were defending her, that organization. Everyone knew about Jessica's story because as soon as the ACLU started doing something, word got out through progressive channels, people started hearing about it, and people knew that Jessica was going to get harassed for this. So what happened? They would follow Jessica's Twitter account. When people said nasty things to her, they would take screenshots of all the nasty things they said to her. They went to Jessica's Facebook group and monitored it, because when people left really horrible comments, they would take screenshots of those. They would send it to not just the authorities, if it required it, they would send it to the school and said, this kid threatened another student, what are you going to do about it? The school had to suspend a lot of kids for it. And after all of this, over the course of a full year it took to get a ruling on this, the judge finally said, it's religious, that thing has to come down. Jessica won the case, and then she got even more harassment. The school had to decide whether or not to appeal the ruling, and there was such chaos over Christians who wanted to see this prayer like still up there, and the school board saying, we want to see it up there too, but we don't want to throw money at a case we're going to lose, because even they knew this was a bad idea. On my website, we actually wanted to find a way to thank Jessica for dealing with all this crap, so we started raising money for her. And one state senator went on the radio and actually talked about Jessica, and he said, she's an evil little thing, trying to do this, trying to take this prayer down. So on the internet, you had a group of people start selling evil little thing t-shirts as a badge of honor. And all the money they raised went to Jessica's scholarship fund. And on my website, people started chipping in like crazy, and people started giving donations. The American Humanist Association was holding on to the money. When all was said and done last year, we were able to give Jessica a check for like $60-some thousand. And by the way, Jessica is now a graduate. She is going to college starting this fall. I think in like Vermont or somewhere East Coasty. So good for her. She'll be able to put that to use. But here's the difference. Everyone seemed to be supportive of what Jessica had to go through. And I think everyone would have been supportive of what Nicole had to go through in Oklahoma. But no one knew about the case. No one knew what to do. No one went to those school board meetings to defend Nicole because the case was isolated. And now people are aware that kids are going through this. They're aware of the stories. They want to find some way to help, and now we can do it. And now if anytime there's an atheist student going through some sort of battle, there are organizations that will step up to defend them. There are individuals who will step up and when that Oklahoma kid wanted to take down the 10 Commandments, I had people emailing me saying, is there any way I can go to the school and be this kid's bodyguard for a while? I don't think that's legal. You can't just show up at the school. But you had people saying, if this kid needs an escort as he walks from school and back, we will be there to help him out. Really awesome, the sort of outreach these kids get now. So that's really nice to see. Let's scroll through that. One thing that is really cool about what atheists are doing online too, you start seeing this kind of camaraderie around other atheists coming out. So I've seen this, oh my God, go back. You see this on Facebook where you had one day where people would just say, take a picture of yourself coming out of the closet. Or say, I'm an atheist and I'm a good person. Just hold up a sign saying that. And this spread in a lot of places on Facebook. I'm an atheist that didn't comb his hair this morning. Yes. I'm an atheist and I also speak Spanish. Hello, I'm an atheist. I'm an atheist and I love you. Yesterday, actually, it's been happening for 4 years in America, but they had Hug an Atheist Day, where college students who were still in school, they would go on campus, set up shop, and they would just say, we're here to give you a hug. That's it. You don't think of atheists as being the give us a hug sort of people, but they would. And if people were interested, they would have a discussion about it. So that's been going on. So you're starting to see all this awesome stuff happen. I think this is going to be a big story in the next couple of years to come as you see more students start to come out. I've heard of atheist groups starting in middle schools. Not a lot, but a few of them. Again, totally legal. But you have people talking about it. They're not afraid about it. The fact that gay marriage is still an issue in so much of the country. You have a lot of kids worked up to do something about that, and all this kind of feeds into the same loop, which is what can we do to support each other and help each other, and it's just growing. It's wonderful. So if I can answer any questions, let me know. My information is there if you ever want to contact me, but yeah, thank you for coming.